One last comment about registered retirement income funds before we get off this, and it concerns the final days of our lives. The tax situation for registered accounts in general, certainly this affects RSPs and RRIFs very substantially, is that when I pass away, if I have a spouse, I can transfer to them pretty much tax-free, but when they pass away, it all gets taxed on the date of death. So whether it's myself or the date of the second spouse passing away, all this money that's still in a RRIF or still in an RSP comes into my final tax return and is generally taxed at a higher rate than is normal for myself. I could well have put this money aside into my RSP during the many years while I was not making, I might have been making enough money to keep me in the first couple tax brackets. And suddenly, on the last day of our lives, it all goes into taxation. And it could be taxed at the highest tax bracket. So if you've spent your whole life putting this money away into your RSP, and then it converts to a RRIF, of course, and you did that at a low tax bracket or a medium tax bracket, and suddenly you pass away and it all gets taxed at a very high tax bracket, your estate did not win. The government is going to actually collect more taxes on it than they give you in a refund to give you, which was the incentive to put it in there. So taxation at death is a very, very important issue on these things. So again, I encourage you to always be trying to manage your affairs such that you're taking that money out of your RRIF or your RSP in a way that's going to try to empty it when you're going to pass away, so that you don't get hit with this large tax bill in the final days. And too little attention is paid to this. In fact, recently the government lowered the amount that had to come out of the RRIFs, and people are talking about, well, now I can be taxed less. Well, the reality is, I would say for a great many of my clients, we already withdraw more than the mandatory amount from the RRIF, because it actually, when you're focused on what is my total tax bill for the rest of my life, you'll realize that sometimes it's better to pay taxes a little bit early at a much lower tax bracket than it is to pay taxes later at a much higher tax bracket. So we voluntarily take out more from the RRIFs than is required. And I think you're going to see a little bit more of this now that we've introduced tax-free savings accounts, and I'll talk a little bit about that with tax-free savings accounts. But be mindful of the fact that just because the government has come along and said you have to take less out of your RRIF, that you should take less out of your RRIF. So I spent all these years receiving refunds based on lower tax brackets, and suddenly we're paying a lot of money on our final demise. Now, it's kind of puzzled to me a little bit about the government's recently changed the amount that you have to take out of your RRIF each year. And the way a RRIF works is that at 71, you have to convert all your RSPs to a RRIF, and then starting at the following year, generally the year we turn 72 for most of us, we must take out a certain percentage. And that percentage, again, it's changed a number of times, and it's changed again. And talking about exactly that number isn't important because it could well change again. But essentially the way the program works is that you need to take out a higher percentage every year as you get older. And then when you get into your 90s, you're supposed to take out 20% of the plan in those last few years. That may, even under that scheme, it still leaves you with money in the plan because it's 20% of a declining amount. But the issue is that you want to manage that. You don't want to be managed by the specifics of the plan. And certainly with a lot of our clients, since we do our clients' final tax returns, we see this big tax number that appears. We try to manage it for our clients ahead of time. So we're going to try to reduce their RRIF to where it possibly is zero or very small by the time they actually pass away. to control how much taxes is paid. We just don't see an advantage to allow it to sit there and be taxed at a much higher tax bracket when I could be in a lower tax bracket by just removing the money a few years early. And so people have to get used to taking action that'll have them voluntarily pay taxes earlier than they have to, but at a much lower rate than if they delay this. Again, be mindful of the fact that if you spent your life building up RSPs and then you've got RIFs, that you're supposed to be concerned about your taxes throughout your whole life, including the last day. And so you want to manage those final withdrawals to reduce the final tax bill. With setting the amount that you have to take out at age 72 to a smaller amount, the message that's coming across is that it's better to do that. And I should be taking less out because that's a good thing. My RRIF will last longer. I won't run out of money before I die. But that's got to be fit into the context of your whole plan. That maybe that's not something you need from your RRIF. And it's different for every person. So again, when you're making decisions on your RSP or on your RRIF, you have to fit this into your current situation and your future situation, not somebody else's, and certainly not what the government's ideal of what your life is going to look like 20 years from now, because believe me, it's different than yours. And so you always want to be using these RSP plans and these RRIF plans in the context of what's good for you. And how does it fit into you, and how do you lower your lifetime tax bill? And that will take some thought and some consideration around your own affairs.